Greetings, salutations, welcome to Kindra's Corner. Today I will be presenting 2 book reviews for you, non-fiction, occult-based book reviews for you. Straight out of here in my cuisine, my kitchen. And this first book I'm going to present to you is on traditional witchcraft. Long awaited. I've been wanting to present this to you for a while now, but well, hey, life. So, the book I have for you today is what I would say is the most underrated book on traditional witchcraft, and that is The Ineffable Name by George Hares. This gorgeous cover, which unfortunately is glossy, and you all know how I feel about glossy covers when I'm for being presented on the internet, because as you see, my ring light is reflecting through it, but I'll do what I can to avoid that. But anyways, The Ineffable Name by George Hares, and that's not the full title. Full title is The Ineffable Name, something something. I can't read it in this lighting, but you could read it there. Here we go. Anyhow, and the foreword is by Jim McGarry. And what makes this book incredible is that this is the book and the only book I recommend for beginners on the path of traditional witchcraft. Now, there is another book that came out around the same time as this one, or this one might even be a little bit older. This one either came out just before The Crooked Path by Kelton or around the same time. Now, this book, though, got lost in the shadows, you could say, or through all the popularity of The Crooked Path by Kelton, and Kelton's a good author, and I'm not knocking The Crooked Path, it's just that that book got too much attention, and it came out during the pandemic years, you could say, when everyone was jumping on, during the lockdowns, when almost everyone and their grandmother decided to jump on the bandwagon of traditional witchcraft. Well, and then that book came out, and because it's a Llewellyn book, it got publicity en masse, you could say, with that. And that's what I don't like about it. Not the book itself, but how all the attention went there and everyone ran to that book. Now, in comparison, The Crooked Path compared to The Ineffable Name is The Crooked Path is a book for those who maybe don't want to practice traditional witchcraft or have no clue about witchcraft whatsoever. Maybe all they know or heard about is Wicca, and they're curious. So that book is good for that, and it's very good in differentiating between Wicca and tradcraft, non-Wiccan witchcraft. And it gives some lovely exercises in it. However, it's a Llewellyn book, and like anything Llewellyn, it's no fault of the author, but if you publish a Llewellyn, you have to make your books accessible for the masses. Now, the thing is with traditional witchcraft, it's not for everybody. It's not meant to be for everybody. Anyone could be interested in it, but not everyone has the ability within them, or I should say, are accepted by the spirits, which tradcraft works with the spirit world and the devil. If you're not working with the devil, it's not traditional witchcraft. It is innately, as I mentioned in one of my podcasts, it is an innately left-hand path, and that's why we love it. You know, and what is presented in the Crooked Path book is more leaning towards right-hand path. It's very tradcraft, Wiccan-esque. Tradcraft is what I would call it. And it's good if you want to explain it to someone who maybe doesn't want to practice or is considering practicing it. But this book, The Ineffable Name, is really meant for someone who wants to seriously embark and start practicing traditional witchcraft without any fear, without any reservations. And traditional witchcraft, and I will be bringing this up in a future, not so distant future podcast, eventually soon. speaking more about the differences of tradcraft and folk magic and all that stuff. But I will be bringing this up more in details in the podcast, that we're all born with the ability to connect with spirit or connect with things of the other, or commune with the devil or connect with the devil. However, not everyone has that ability within them activated, or it's forever dormant, or if they do try to initiate it, they're not accepted by the realm or the world of the other, meaning the fairy, the spirits, and not accepted by the devil, for the devil does not accept everyone. Not everyone is of or belonging to those of the other. You could say, and that's the other world. That's where traditional witchcraft comes in. So even though you could maybe want to be practicing it or try or dip your toes into it, it's really only for those who are serious about it and know that their life, their soul will be dedicated to it for eternity. And this is my take on it. George Hares is not saying that, but when you compare his book to The Crooked Path, that's it. Crooked Path is good if you just want to research it, you want to know. This book is if you really want to seriously start practicing it and you're a total beginner to witchcraft, or particularly to traditional witchcraft. And that's traditional folkloric witchcraft. And George Hares, the way he writes is amazing. He makes everything very clear. He writes in these in-depth topic here, this in-depth details, but in a fashion that is very easy to understand and very clear. And he basically, he has an awesome YouTube channel. If you check his YouTube channel, he writes as he speaks. So when you're reading this, it's like you're having a conversation with George Hares. And it's a very easy read, but a very intense topic. And there's things in here, rituals he gives for you to do. So it's not just a book of, oh, look, here's what it is. No, he gives you rituals that he himself has practiced. And what I like about this is, like in his YouTube videos, George Hares shares his experience, the good and the bad, meaning like, I did this ritual, and he'll give the results. Maybe it's not exactly as he expected, but he still gets a result. And things don't always go as planned in traditional witchcraft, because when you're working with spirits, the realm of the other, and especially the devil, you're not in full control. You could initiate the, what you want, you could activate what you want, you could let them know, hey, I'm working with you, here's what I'm working for. But after that, it's basically, no matter what you do, it's out of your hands. This is how I'm putting it. George has a very good way of explaining everything in here. And it's not over packed with information. What's in here is what's necessary for you to read and what to know, I should say. And what I really like about this book is that, I'm sorry, it's damn glare. I'll hold it like this. So, what I really love about this book is that it's the whole book is not based on, I'm comparing traditional witchcraft to other forms of witchcraft, or I'm not comparing it to Wicca. George Hare is not presenting it like that. He's presenting it like, here's tradcraft based on my experience and from those that I know who are seasoned in the practice. And he dives into this. It's really great book to really not just dip your toes into it, but to downright start practicing. And you don't have to know anything about witchcraft or have practiced it before, but if tradcraft is in your heart and you feel the spirit's calling you, the devil's calling you, jump into this book then over the other book. The other book, like I said, is good if you just want to know, or you're someone who maybe likes to dip your toes in every type of witchcraft and whatever, then go to The Crooked Path. And like I said, that one is very watered down, though. It's a Llewellyn book, accessible for the masses. This is very clear when you're reading it. It's not written to be accessible for the masses. That's what I love about it. It's a really, this is authentic tradcraft beginner book, Tradcraft 101. And it's the only one like it on the market. And I highly recommend this. Easily accessible through Amazon. This is actually not even George Hare's first book. This is his second book. This author has another book on, I think it's called Barbarous Words, something like that. It's about the power in creating your own language, your own words, as we do in magic and witchcraft, where it's just words of power. But that's a whole other topic. I'm not going to get into that. Maybe I'll speak about it in a podcast. If you're interested, look up his book on that. And there's a few other authors too, Tradcraft authors who speak about that. But again, George Harris writes it in a way that's more easily understandable for those totally new to it. And Gemma Gary wrote the intro for this. She wrote the intro for The Crooked Path. Now, here's the difference, though. When you read the intro to that book, you could tell it was very calculated, very thought out, and is meant to suit the book. For this, and it even states in the book, Gemma Gary writes herself, that she basically wrote this last minute. And she was really busy at the time in finishing up works of her own. And she just wrote this. It's literally the foreword's written straight from her heart, nothing premeditated, nothing calculated. And wow, the information she gives in the foreword, it's not just a little tiny page, it's like in depth. And it really sets the tone for this work to jumping into George Hare's work. Now, I'll give you a little indication what's in here. I have to put on, though, the dreaded glasses for this. Okay, so let's see. The Ineffable Name. And maybe I should do this. I'll read it better. Here, no glare. I could read it better for you. The Ineffable Name, A Crafter's Guide to Traditional Witchcraft. That's the full title of the book. And on the first page here, that's a picture of George Hare's altar, stang, which stang is used in traditional witchcraft, but not always. But it is the witch's altar for outdoor rituals in all reality. Now, I'll give you a little indication here what this says from page 1, table of contents. We have the table of contents, as mentioned, forward by Gemma Gary. And then we have the introduction. Now, it's not just an introduction, page introduction. The introduction is broken up into 3 sections. So, introduction, the first little part we have here is, what is traditional witchcraft? Then, here's the part I really love, and no other book on Tradcraft explains this or breaks it up the way George has here. Bodies of influence, Luciferian, Christian, and pagan. And he explains how Tradcraft is influenced by these 3 and exactly where Tradcraft takes from Christianity, Luciferianism, and paganism. So this is very interesting. And then the introduction ends with seeking old craft. Then we dive into the meat and potatoes of the book, the core of it. And the core is broken up into sections. The first section is titled Instruments of Art. The tools, their uses, the Axis Mundi, and the Sabbaths. And then in that, of course, it's that section consists of the tools, the world tree ritual he gives, when tools no longer serve you, and meditations as a means for witchcraft. Then he goes into plants, herbs, and wort cunning. Then more into wort cunning with a wort cunning charm of fairy hair. And then the wheel. Now, just a little pause here before I continue with what else is in this book. I really love that he wrote in the section of this chapter on meditation. Reason being, and this is something that's coming up in a podcast very soon on traditional witchcraft, meditation. There's a lot of modern or new Tradcrafters who are spewing out there, just like a lot of Satanists do, or not a lot, a few, that meditation is an Eastern practice and it has nothing to do with traditional witchcraft. The Satanists, of course, say it has nothing to do with Satanism. Those few, very few. Um, Satanists will say that. But this thing about the younger generation of traditional witchcraft practitioners, and like I said, those, it seems to be those who are new to the practice or fairly new to the practice, saying this. Now, meditation is not just an Eastern practice. It has always been a practice or a form of meditation practice throughout the world, not just in the East. In the East, they have their specific way of doing it. I know in England, traditional witchcraft in England, a lot of times it's called going within, but going within is meditation. And meditation is key to any occult practice, any witchcraft practice. And the whole concept of spirit flight or astral flight is based on meditation within traditional witchcraft. So I'm very happy, and I was very happy when I saw this in the book that George Hares put meditation, a section here about meditation as a means for witchcraft, because it very much is a part of traditional witchcraft. Now, the second chapter goes into the witch gods and deities worked with on the cunning path. And then there's a few little things here. What I really like here is that, of course, he mentions the devil and the queen of Elfheim, because to me personally, there is no traditional witchcraft, or what you're practicing is not pure traditional witchcraft if you're not working with the devil and the queen of Elfheim, or one or the other, or at least just the devil. But Queen of Elfheim is very important. It's his counterpart, right? And I love that he also mentions under this section old fate, because fate is very much a belief or a concept in traditional witchcraft. And yes, we all have our free will and control what we want, but there are things that are fated. All we could control is how we reach that fate, how we meet it. And so he likes that. And there's, of course, other things in here. He speaks about Tubal Cain and something else here. Tubal Cain and other things about the gods. Traditional witchcraft is not doesn't really work with mythological pantheons. It doesn't work with mythological pantheons at all. It's all spirit based, and deities or spirits from folklore, various folklores, and like of course the devil, Queen of Elfheim from the other world. Now, next chapter dives into the liminal world, spirit work within the ways of the witch. And in this little section, it's basically listening to the land. He talks about the mighty dead and the ritual of tapping the bone, or what is tapping the bone. I know that could sound kind of kinky, but trust me, it's not sexual. But yeah, so tapping the bone, the mighty dead, the familiar spirit, and then how to gain a fairy counterpart, and acquiring other abilities, and etc. is touched upon in this chapter. Now, next section or chapter is titled "The Cult of the Witch: Rites and Ritual in the Old Path." Now, this little part speaks, what I like is, people always like to talk about, or those who think they know tradcraft, talk about, oh, the compass round. In Wicca, there's a circle. In tradcraft, it's the compass round, but it's the same thing. It's just a different name for it. No. Traditional witchcraft, we do work with the circle sometimes, depending on the ritual or if needed. But the circle casting, laying of the circle is very different than the laying of the compass round or erecting the compass round. And what I love is George Hares mentions the different kinds of compasses within tradcraft. It's not just one. So we have the compass round, then the personal compass round. He talks about Elfheim's compass round, because there's different compasses which are setting of energy, and I'll talk about this more in the podcast I'll be doing on Tradcraft. So I'm not going to dive into it now and give away what's in the book. Get this book and see what George Hares has to say about it. And then we get into working with the arts or winds. So working with the wind, the magic of the arts, and or the arts is how it's pronounced. And then he speaks about the lesser compass. Then he gets into treading the mill, because that's another thing. A lot of those fairly new or young to Tradcraft is they think that treading the mill and the compass is the same thing, just different names for it. Treading the mill is something totally different, and George Hares explains it very well in here and gives methods of doing it that he has used. And then, of course, he speaks about the Huzel, or what is called the Bewitched Feast, and then he gives a rite for the Huzel. Huzel is something done within any given ritual of traditional witchcraft, usually at the end. And that's all I'll say on it. Like I said, get this book. And then we have the next little chapter here. It's a short chapter. He talks about, it's called Into the Night, Hedge Witchery, and Fetch Flight. Now, fetch flight is the same as spirit flight. Normally we call it, but fetch flight too, because you go into your fetch self or your other form or animal form a lot of the time. Of course, all within spirit or the astral. We don't physically turn into an animal. However, he explains about that in that section, and he gives little exercise you could do if you want to try it out. And then the last section is titled Spells and Sorcery, Folk Magic Within the Witch Cult. And he gives different things, like he speaks about the triangle of art and how that's worked in traditional witchcraft, how to cast successful spells. And then he gives the 9 herb charm and a few other spells here that you could try out. And then what I also love about this, and I think this is a self-published book, and a lot of self-published books don't list the bibliographies. What George Hares does here, he lists a bibliography and a recommended reading list. So this is, I really love this book for that. And I would say, like the last book I presented on traditional witchcraft by Carrie Weisner called The Art. Difference between the art and this is the art is way more detailed, way more in depth. You need to already know at least the base or basic foundation of witchcraft to really be able to work what's in that grimoire and fully understand it. George Hare's book is for someone who maybe doesn't know the basic foundation in its entirety or never practiced any form of witchcraft before. I would say this book complements the art very well. I would say if you never practiced witchcraft before, or traditional witchcraft especially, dive into George Hare's book here, The Ineffable Name, and then move on to Carrie Weisner's book, The Art. The Art is a grimoire. And if you want to fully understand the art, get the foundation here, the basic foundation here, and then dive into that grimoire and work those rituals and get into working with spirit. Now, what I love about how George Hares writes is that the rituals presented in here, he has worked them. And like his YouTube channel, he explains what it is, how it affected him, and things that surprised him in it. So I like that. And it's beautifully illustrated, great artwork in here. The artwork is all presented by a good friend of George Hares who did the artwork for this. I'll show you some samples. We have that's gorgeous. Then we have some other one here that I like. Beautiful art. I hope you're all seeing that or can see it. Come on. this one. Gorgeous, gorgeous stuff throughout, and some sigils in Tradcraft 2 are presented herein, which I'm not coming across now, but they're there. And like, look at this. This is like amazing. This is an example of a fetch. Someone turned into their fetch self, which it's a rabbit, but this person's fetch self is they're half rabbit, half human. And well, you want to learn how to obtain a fetch. There are books out there on that, but this book is very great. Explains what it is and how to get to know your fetch form in a way that is for beginners. And what else is in this book here? We have yeah, the bibliography is fairly long. It is, oh no, this is the recommended reading list and bibliography. It's 2.5 pages long. It's a lot of things crammed in there. And then we have a picture of George Hares himself with his stang and a short paragraph of who he is. And I think his YouTube channel is listed there. No, his Instagram account is listed there. But check him out on YouTube. His YouTube channel's under his name, George Hares. And on that, he presents in his older videos, he has some book reviews on traditional witchcraft books, and also his experiences with rituals, how making black salt in Tradcraft, and his experiences and his opinions on traditional witchcraft on his YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. It's been up for quite a long time. So if you don't know it, go and check it out. Check out this book. Now, his first book was, like I said, I believe the name is Barbados Words, it's called. That's a good book, but I would say read this one first. And even George Hares himself on YouTube stated he wished that he wrote this book first, and I don't blame him. So jump into this book, and this is the only Tradcraft 101 book I would highly recommend. And great book to read. Like I said, complements Kerry Weisner's The Art very well. You read this, then you'll be able to fully understand and work that grimoire. And anything that Jim McGarry or Nigel Pearson has written, but how they write is they just dive right into it, right? So the reader's almost expected to already know what it is or figure it out as they read. But if you read this book and you don't have experience with traditional witchcraft and you're really serious about practicing it and you feel the calling, authentically feel the calling, read this book so then you can really better understand those books, especially if you're going to read anything from Robin Artisan, one of my favorite authors. I would on Tradcraft, if not the favorite one, because how he writes and how he works is very close to what I do. And but again, his writings could be hard to understand for someone totally new beginner. But if you read this, you'll be able to understand it a lot more. So this is my recommendation and choppy review for The Ineffable Name by George Hares, A Crafter's Guide to Traditional Witchcraft. And I'll be back, same background, same look. I'm recording my next video, which is going to be on Satanism, traditional Satanism. So that's it for now for traditional witchcraft for today. Darkest blessings under Lucifer's light. See you soon.